Reinhard Heydrich's story does not begin with a monster, it begins with a humiliated boy standing on a dusty German playground in the early 1900s, gripping his violin case while other children taunted him with a single word, Mischling, mixed blood, a slur that would carve itself into his identity, because even though he was fully German, fully Aryan, the rumor that he had Jewish ancestry followed him like a curse. A rumor he could never shake, a rumor that would eventually shape the cruelty he unleashed on millions. Born into a musical family, pressured to be perfect by a strict, demanding father who saw weakness as sin, young Heydrich grew up in a house where failure was a crime and silence was safer than being heard, and from that pressure cooker emerged a shy, awkward, razor-intelligent boy desperate to prove himself. He joined the Navy as a teenager, dreaming of honor and prestige, but he didn't rise through discipline or charisma, he rose because he was brilliant, cold, and ruthlessly efficient, treating naval regulations like mathematical puzzles. Yet even that wasn't enough to protect him from the humiliation that shaped his destiny. At age 27 he was kicked out of the Navy in disgrace for breaking off an engagement with a woman he'd promised to marry. In a single day, he lost his career, his social standing, and his future. He wandered jobless through Germany, a failed officer with a ruined reputation, until he encountered the rising Nazi party and, more crucially, Heinrich Himmler, who hired him on the spot after Heydrich spent hours outlining, from memory, an entire intelligence network structure he had designed on the fly. That moment was the birth of the modern SS intelligence machine, and Heydrich, fueled by resentment and the need to erase every trace of his past shame, became the architect. Cold. Perfect. Obsessively disciplined. His mind worked like a steel trap, every enemy catalogued, every threat analyzed, every potential rival eliminated before they even realized they were being watched. Himmler admired him, feared him, envied him, sometimes all in the same breath. Hitler simply called him the man with the iron heart, a title both praise and prophecy. In a few short years, Heydrich built the SD, the secret service that stalked dissidents through whispers and shadows. He orchestrated the Night of the Long Knives, the purge that annihilated Hitler's rivals in the SA leadership. It was Heydrich's intelligence files that justified each execution, it was his cold voice that signed off on names. He operated like a surgeon cutting away diseased tissue, except the tissue was human lives. But his rise was only beginning. When Germany annexed Czechoslovakia, Hitler sent Heydrich to crush resistance and bend Prague to the Reich. Instead, Heydrich transformed the city into something horrifying, a place where trains ran on time, streets were clean, wages increased, and thousands were quietly disappeared in the night. He understood a terrifying truth, that people can be pacified with comfort while terror works in the dark, and that combination earned him his most infamous title, the Butcher of Prague. Yet what made Heydrich so frightening wasn't merely his brutality, it was the charisma, the athletic charm, the violin playing, fencing champion, Pilates persona layered over it. Soldiers admired him. Women adored him. Even enemies admitted he had the aura of a man born to command. And beneath that polished exterior lurked a meticulous architect of genocide. Heydrich was one of the primary minds behind the final solution. It was he who convened the 1C conference, where the machinery of mass extermination was formalized. He entered the room not as a raving fanatic but as a calm administrator explaining logistics, transportation timetables, camp capacities, quotas, efficiency benchmarks, murder turned into spreadsheets. His rise seemed unstoppable. He had Hitler's trust, Himmler's fear, the SS's loyalty, and a growing mythology around him. But that arrogance set the stage for his downfall. In 1942, Heydrich traveled through Prague in an open-top Mercedes, refusing security escorts because he believed no one would dare attack him. He saw fear as armor. He thought terror made him untouchable. And for a long time, it did, until two men parachuted into Czechoslovakia from a British plane under Operation Anthropoid, Joseph Gabčík and Jan Kubis, ordinary soldiers sent to kill a man the world whispered about in dread. On May 27, 1942, as Heydrich's car slowed at a sharp curve in the road, Gabčík stepped forward, leveled his Sten gun, pulled the trigger, and the weapon jammed. Heydrich, instead of ducking or fleeing, stood up in the car and aimed his pistol directly at the attacker. That arrogance, that instinct to dominate, cost him everything. Cubis hurled a modified anti-tank grenade, which exploded beside the car, sending metal fragments into Heydrich's spine and abdomen. Even wounded, Heydrich chased his attackers on foot, firing wildly, refusing to show weakness. He collapsed only after blood loss overwhelmed him. Surgeons believed he would recover. Hitler demanded he survive. But infection spread through his body. For the first time in his life, Heydrich faced an enemy he could not intimidate, outthink, or dominate. On June 4, 1942, Reinhard Heydrich died at age 38. One of the most feared men in Europe, a mastermind of terror, undone by a moment of pride and a grenade thrown by two young men who refused to bow. His death triggered one of the most brutal reprisals of the war, the destruction of the village of Lidice, its men shot, its women and children deported, its buildings burned to ash. Even in death, his shadow killed thousands. But his legacy did not become legend, instead it became a warning. Historians have tried to understand how a humiliated boy became a titan of evil, how a disgraced naval officer transformed into the architect of genocide, how intelligence without conscience becomes a weapon of mass destruction. Heydrich's rise was meteoric, his power immense, his fall sudden, his end inglorious. He remains the clearest example in World War II of a villain forged not by madness alone, but by insecurity, brilliance, ambition, resentment, and the seductive intoxication of unchecked authority. He wanted to erase his past, to transcend humiliation, to prove himself superior, and in doing so he built an empire of fear, and then died believing himself invincible. His story is not just the arc of a villain, it is the blueprint of how darkness grows in plain sight, how ordinary wounds create extraordinary monsters, and how even the most terrifying men are not immortal. They bleed. They fall. And sometimes, the entire world breathes easier when they do. If you want the next long-form villain arc, subscribe. Because we're just getting started.